it's always important to start with the end in mind and work backwards from there. What's that vision going to look like?
Have a little bit more of a plan at the beginning, I think. So maybe start with a plan. I had a vision of the end, didn't know how to get there.
So I'd like to introduce Max Fuhrer to the episode of Epic Entrepreneurs Podcast. Top 3 things you did that have made you successful in business and how others could possibly follow in your footsteps.
Well, I suppose the first thing I'd think of is, I just stuck to it really, sort of I suppose I had a vision of what I wanted to do, and I'm a baker pastry cook, so I did an apprenticeship. I travelled to Switzerland and worked there. My dad's Swiss, so I worked as a baker pastry cook in Switzerland for 3 years, and already then, even during my apprenticeship, I had this idea I was going into business. My dad had been a businessman, and I did that and quickly discovered I knew nothing about business, but could do what I did, and we had this incredible increase at the beginning. It was like, I don't know, it was like 5-fold in the first year, and it was like, and then I had to start employing, because it started from nothing, it was just me, an apprentice, and someone in the shop, and then had to start employing people and had to start learning. But stick to it, probably is number one. I just stuck to it,
What were some of the key things that you've identified along the way that were important as part of that learning?
Learning to be a businessman, I suppose. And I suppose it's that old cliche. A tradesman who's pretty good at their trade decided to go into business, and it's like, oh my goodness, this is not what I actually learned. The baking was still fundamental to what we do on that quality side, but the whole animal, of the business is a whole different thing, and I started off without, not even having a proper brand, or we just dove in this old premises, and there were so many things, which seem obvious that you do at the beginning that I didn't do,
What were some of the key things that you've identified along the way that were important as part of that learning?
Learning to be a businessman, I suppose. And I suppose it's that old cliche. A tradesman who's pretty good at their trade decided to go into business, and it's like, oh my goodness, this is not what I actually learned. The baking was still fundamental to what we do on that quality side, but the whole animal, of the business is a whole different thing, and I started off without, not even having a proper brand, or we just dove in this old premises, and there were so many things, that you just, which seem obvious that you do at the beginning that I didn't do,
If you think back along that part of the journey, 2 or 3 things that really made you successful, the things that you actually did early in that journey.
I was flexible, I suppose. So just learned to do whatever was needed next, which I suppose that's coupled with that determination, or I never let up. So if there was a roadblock, if there was some sort of a hurdle, it was like, how do we solve this? How do we get over it? What are the steps? What do we need to know? What do we need to do? So that willingness to learn, that willingness to push on, I think.
What made you decide to get into the business, and then why this business, and understanding that, it's probably a bit of a family career path?
Yeah, early on I had a desire to be a pastry cook. When I was 13, I took a trip to Europe with my parents, and that's when I first had that idea of that might be a career path for me. And I mucked around at school and left school early and started baking. and yeah, I don't know, right from the beginning, I imagined that this was leading me to go into business, my brother, he was a butcher, he's 4 years older than me, and he did an apprenticeship and opened a butcher shop. And I'd seen it a bit in my family otherwise. My dad had been in various different businesses. He originally a cheesemaker, and then, had a fencing business, and had a poultry farm, and not in that order, but yeah.
In all of that time then, Max, what's been your biggest challenge that you've had to face? And then how did you actually overcome it?
Been a few. Staying in business has been a challenge at times, right at the beginning, we grew so fast, and then had to borrow money, and And then, after 2 years, I thought this is, the bank was bouncing some checks, and I was like, this, like, we're not going to get through this. That's what I think. How I got through that, though, was just I just grit my teeth and just did what I needed to do. Yeah. And you work some unbelievable hours at the beginning too. Like when you started a business, to do a 14-hour day was like normal.
Tell me, how much of a self-belief came into play in those earlier days?
Yeah, lots. I mean, I don't know where that comes from. Yeah, so, yeah, but I have that. Like, even now, I'm just actually starting a new venture, and it's like, my wife thinks I'm mad, and it's just like, oh.
Who is your business coach?
Chris Whelan, he's my business coach.
Why did you get one, and what has it done for you and the business?
I've only worked with Chris this year, and that's just been helpful. I had a business coach back in 2012 too, which was sort of a bit of a pressure point in time when we had this big client who had lots of stores in Wellington, probably about 8 stores, I think 8 or 9 stores. And they just from just overnight, they started getting the stuff. They didn't even tell us, like one day they were ordering, the next day they weren't. So, and there was a bit of a tight spot, and something led me to this talk where I got a business coach, and yeah, I learned a whole lot of things just to be more proactive. And I worked with this guy for several years, and that was really fruitful, really. And I got all sorts of KPIs in place and different systems, and I got a CRM at that point in time. And yeah, and then now, just more recently, I don't know, maybe last year I was feeling I was sometimes just procrastinating a little bit, or you got to, because I'm my driver in a way, so. And then I just had this. I sort of thought about something, and Chris turned up, and I thought, yeah, let's do this, And so, more thinking about, maybe we're thinking about more exit strategies a little bit. Maybe not so much. I don't have any plan. I don't have any real plans of stopping. But yeah, maybe just getting things to run more, to get the place more systemized. Yeah, and running under management.
What's the top piece of advice that you got or would give to another entrepreneur?
Enjoy the ride, maybe, or because you got to have a life as well. So.
And that's a wrap for today's epic conversation here on Epic Entrepreneurs. If you enjoyed this episode, hit that subscribe button, leave a review, share it, or hit that bell. But until next time, let's make sure you keep dreaming, take massive action, and stay epic.